Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is our AP Prep Week. Today's, of course, Wednesday the 6th. I'm Dr. Swope, and we're lucky enough to have Dr. Jane Hallinan join us. Let me give you a quick introduction. Hopefully, I don't think we can see him wave back, but Dr. Hallinan is a former chief reader, and she's going to speak to that a little bit. You know, what the heck is a chief reader, and why, if you're going to take this test in about 2 weeks, why does that matter, and why we're lucky enough to have her give us some time. And she's been involved in the AP psychology exam process for 14 years. So she really knows kind of the ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes, and maybe can give us some tips to prepare for this. She still occasionally, even though she's not the chief reader now, she still does occasionally contribute to making the test questions and that kind of process. She's a textbook author, and this is a textbook that some of you might want to pick up, because if you're taking AP Psych, there's a good chance you like Psych, and then you're going to major in Psych. So she has a book called The Psychology Major Companion, and it might be something that you might want to put on your wish list on Amazon and take a look at it as you move on to college. She teaches intro psych, social psych, history of psych, and positive psych, and the psychology and the movies, which is a class I kind of want to take. And then she is a professor at University of West Florida, and she's been a dean, and maybe she can talk about what that means, because as we were talking, it's a fancy word, but no one knows what it means. But I think her first love is being back in the classroom. So let me turn it over to Dr. Hallinan. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody in AP land. I'm just delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you, and I'm excited for what's going to be coming at you shortly, your opportunity to demonstrate how much you've learned in the classes that you've been in this year. I have been involved with AP for a long time. In fact, I started before you were born in 1995. I ended up being a chief reader, and I know that that might not have a whole lot of meaning to you, but here's how the sausage is made. When you finish your exam, it ends up being channeled to a reader who's either going to be a high school teacher or a college teacher, both teaching intro psych. Their job is to figure out the caliber of writing and thinking that you're doing on free response questions, and to determine whether or not a 5 or a 3 or a 4 is in order. But because ETS cares so much about good quality process, there's a huge infrastructure to make sure that people get a fair shake. In fact, the people who are drawn to this experience as readers really love teaching, and they like students, and they go into it with the attitude that they're rooting for you. But we want to make sure that they're not biased, and we want to make sure that they give every kid a fair shake. And so to ensure that, there are people who take a look at the judgments that are being made, and the person who oversees the entire process is the chief reader. And so that essentially makes you the boss for when people are engaged in that process, whether they're doing it at AP camp, everybody in one kind of warehouse hangar grading stacks of books, or this year what's going to happen is virtual. But what I can assure you is that the people who are looking at your exam are really well qualified, well trained, enthusiastic people who like students and who will give you a fair judgment. That sort of parallels what a dean is. When you go to college, you'll be in classes with professors like me, but professors also have to respond to supervisors, usually department chairs, and department chairs have to respond to a big overseer, and that's a dean. So I think that makes me sort of super bossy woman, that I tend to run stuff when I get attached to it, and that just seems to be part of my history. So that's a little bit of background, a kind of parallel between being a chief reader and being a dean.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I don't know if you wanted to tackle any of the questions I threw
I
out to you.
do.
Okay, well then please, because we've been lucky, and for those of you who are watching, Mrs. Fenton and I have been so lucky to get hundreds of questions, and today we only have a few, because today we got to jump into our FRQs, but tomorrow and Friday we're going to answer a lot of the questions and show a lot of the pets. So keep the pictures of the pets coming, guys. We really like them. So Dr. Hallinan, please jump in.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, really good ones. The first one is from Shearing Peldon from Eastchester High School in New York. Hi, Shearing, and you ask a great question. and that's for the FRQ. How creative can we get? I can tell you that when readers are assigned to look at and be expert on one question, it really does brighten their day when they run into a response that's creative. So I would encourage you to be creative, but I would also encourage you to keep your eye on the clock, because you don't want to let the creativity run away with itself. You want to make sure that you address the key points that the question is asking. If you can do that in a creative way, your reader will be really thankful that you did that.
I can speak to that. If you were to slip in anything to make the reader smile a little bit, that's approved. That's okay.
Yeah, it is. It breaks up the day, because grading for hours on end, that can be a little bit wearing. So when you can cause people to smile, it does lighten the mood. A second question I have is from Nada, from the International School of Chuafat in Abu Dhabi. I hope I said that right. She wants to know if there is a point where personality stops developing, or does it simply develop all the way through our lifetime? Well, I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I'm happy to report to you that Sigmund Freud was dead wrong when he said that personality is sort of fixed at the age of 5. If that were the case, I wouldn't be able to talk with you, because I was such a shy child at the age of 5. I couldn't even get out from behind my mother's skirts. So fortunately, life will prompt changes. And I'm going to suggest even now, what we're undergoing with the COVID crisis, that's going to prompt some personality changes, that some of which may be enduring. We're going to all look a little bit paranoid for a while, and we'll see whether or not that affects the basic core structure of personality. But I do think that we are adaptable, and that personalities adapt as we change. The last question I want to take on is from Gina Grenio, who's a student at Westosha Central High School. I'm not sure where that is. But the question that she posed that I loved was, I have trouble understanding Ledoux' dual pathways. Do they happen first one and then the other, or how does that work exactly? Well, that can be a little bit confusing, because it feels like it's supporting a little bit the notion of multitasking, which we know brains aren't designed to do. But brains are designed to do some parallel processing. And so what Ledoux was trying to communicate with that theory was the notion that when we get incoming sensory input, the thalamus becomes a switching station. So the message gets divided and gets sent to the high road, cognition, and the low road, the amygdala and emotional base, so that we end up having input from two different sources. He's not the only one that's talked about the ability of the brain to function in two ways. I kind of like Daniel Kahneman's notion, thinking fast and slow, as well, that we're primed to be able to do some things really fast because it's adaptive, and that tends to be more emotional. So if you see something in your pathway and it looks snake-like, you move before your brain registers, oh, that was a snake. So I think that those two theories kind of go hand in hand. If we were able to say now exactly which one happens first, then we'd be able to solve the question that William James, our founder of American psychology, asked in the first place: what is emotion, and how does it work in the brain? We don't really have specific answers, but guess what? Out there in this crowd may be the psychologist in waiting who solves that problem. So I'm hoping that you'll have great good fortune on your exam, and that many of you will find your way into the psychology major. It'll help if you go get my book. And then you'll find a career that is more satisfying than I can tell you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Howland. Thank you so much for taking your time, and wishing these students good luck. I know they're going to do well. So with that, let's stop unfortunately, we got to stop the fun part. And all right, guys, students,
Okay,
why
good luck,
don't you,
everybody.
all right. Thanks so much. And students, why don't you get ready for our next part? We're going to start the FRQ. All right, let me get this going out of the way. Bear with me. Move that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. we are going to, let me move this out of the way. Let's get started, guys. I know we have a short amount of time, so I'm going to assume that you read all of this. Mrs. Fenton did a great job of introducing you to this. So, all right. There we go. We just did the conversation with Dr. Hallinan, so we're going to skip through this. And if we have time at the end, I'm going to go through some of these how-tos, but it's stuff I think at this point you've seen. You know you can copy and paste. You know you can attach a document. You know you can handwrite and attach a photo. And hopefully at this point you've practiced on the demo. And if you haven't, please do that. Please do that. Don't wait until the day of to learn how to do this. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with our first question. I'll read it to you. Michaela has a huge test in 2 weeks. She's been studying hard, but is still nervous about it. Please explain how the following terms can help or hinder her do well on the test. And go. Okay, everyone, you have about 5 minutes left. So at this point, you should kind of begin submitting your work. All right, everyone. I hope that was relatively easy for you, and you knew the terms. Nothing appeared at you that you didn't know. I also hope that you did well with the time. So on the real thing, there's no time to spare. So let's mimic that. We're going to jump right into the next slide in question 2. Okay, 20 minutes. This is going to be the research question. I'm not even going to read it to you. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Okay, it looks like you should be finishing up your writing and starting to the submitting process. So I hope this FRQ wasn't too bad for you. Okay, and that should be about time. Let's wrap this up if we can. Hopefully this essay, this FRQ didn't have any question or any words, or even hopefully not more than one word that you didn't know. We're going to review it tomorrow. But again, I think this was good practice. Remember, practice makes perfect. I'm sure you've heard that a bunch of times. I know we're running out of time. There are plenty of resources out there for you. So please, 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 take advantage of them. Don't wait until the last minute to study. Mrs. Fenton posted the 2019. Here's the 2018, and all of the FRQs are available. And it's interesting. We talked about chief readers. And you can see a chief reader report right here and scoring guidelines and sample responses. And we'll go over a lot of that tomorrow. One of the last things we don't have time for shout outs today, and we don't have time for pets today, but I promise tomorrow we're going to make some time to, get to know some folks out there and definitely talk about some pets. And then this is an interesting screen. You might want to screenshot this. 5 things you should do before the exam to make sure you're ready. Again, we just don't want to have anyone, who studied and knows the material. We don't want you to lose credit because of a technical issue or disorganization issue. Okay, so other important links, screenshot this. A lot of information out there, but if you've been with Mrs. Fenton and I for a while and been, your own teachers too, your best resource. So these are going to help you out. And thanks for watching. We hope you'll join us again. Be sure to complete the practice question. We'll review the answer in the next lesson.